The latest political storm centers around a major shakeup inside the Department of Defense under the Trump administration, a move that has left Washington insiders, international observers, and ordinary citizens asking the same question. What exactly is happening behind closed doors, and why now? The Pentagon, often seen as the heart of U.S. military power, is not only a building of strategy, but a symbol of America's role on the global stage. Any shift in its leadership and policy direction doesn't just affect soldiers in uniform. It has ripple effects across alliances, global security, and even communities far from the battlefield. When we talk about reshaping the Department of Defense, it's important to understand what the department actually does. It oversees the U.S. Armed Forces, including the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Space Force. It manages an enormous budget, hundreds of billions of dollars annually, while directing military strategy, global deployments, and national defense priorities. Whoever holds the reins at the Pentagon influences decisions that touch nearly every corner of the world, from Europe to the Middle East, Asia, and beyond. So when a president initiates sweeping changes, it's never a minor detail. It's a signal of shifting priorities, new strategies, and sometimes political maneuvering. The Trump administration's reshuffling of Pentagon leadership came at a critical moment. There was already tension in Washington, with debates over foreign wars, the role of NATO, and America's military presence in the Middle East. Many saw these changes as a way for Trump to assert tighter control over military decision-making and align the Pentagon more closely with his political vision. To some, this was an overdue correction, a move to shake up what they saw as an entrenched bureaucracy that had grown resistant to civilian oversight. To others, it raised concerns about stability and continuity in military leadership, especially with ongoing conflicts still unresolved. One of the most striking elements of the shakeup was the replacement of high-ranking officials with individuals perceived as more loyal to the administration. On the surface, this looks like a typical political maneuver. Every president appoints people they trust, and every administration wants to leave its stamp on institutions. But what made this particular reshaping so shocking was the timing and the scale. Suddenly, multiple senior officials were either removed or resigned, leaving observers to question whether these were standard leadership transitions or part of a deeper power shift designed to control long-standing defense policies. For people watching from abroad, especially in regions like the Middle East, where U.S. military power has been a constant presence for decades, these changes carried heavy implications. The Pentagon is not just about defending U.S. soil. It shapes policies that affect Muslim communities in places like Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and beyond. Many Muslims have long been caught in the crossfire of U.S. foreign policy. Wars justified under the banner of counterterrorism drone strikes that caused civilian casualties and occupations that often overlooked the cultural, social, and religious complexities of the region. This is where the conversation becomes especially meaningful. A shakeup at the Pentagon, depending on its direction, could either perpetuate the same cycles of military intervention or open doors to a rethinking of U.S. involvement abroad. For Muslims worldwide, a Defense Department willing to acknowledge the cost of endless wars, to prioritize diplomacy over bombs, and to treat Muslim nations with respect rather than suspicion, would represent a desperately needed change. Looking closer at the specific moves, analysts pointed out that the restructuring seemed designed to weaken voices within the Pentagon who were more cautious about abrupt troop withdrawals or who challenged aggressive stances. Trump had long expressed frustration with what he called forever wars. He wanted U.S. forces out of Afghanistan, a move that resonated with many Americans tired of seeing their country spend trillions overseas while neglecting domestic needs. Ironically, this position also aligned with what many Muslims across the globe had been saying for years. Foreign occupations do not bring peace, they bring instability, resentment, and suffering. Yet critics argued that the method of removing experienced officials suddenly created risks. Military operations are complex, requiring steady hands and detailed planning. Rapid withdrawals or sudden strategic changes without adequate preparation could put both American troops and local populations at risk. For instance, in Afghanistan, the concern was that pulling out too quickly would embolden extremist groups, undo fragile peace efforts, and leave ordinary Afghans, including women, minorities, and children, vulnerable once again. This tension reveals the heart of the Pentagon shakeup. Was it a principled attempt to end endless wars and refocus on protecting American interests at home? Or was it a politically motivated move designed to reshape the department in the image of one man's vision? The truth likely lies somewhere in between. What's clear, however, is that the voices most affected, Muslims in war zones, communities living under occupation, families who have endured both the violence of militants and the bombs of foreign militaries, have often been left out of the conversation. For them, a change in the Pentagon could mean the difference between another decade of war or the possibility of peace. Favoring Muslims here doesn't mean favoring one religion over another in an exclusive way. It means recognizing their humanity, their suffering, and the need for policies that respect their right to live free of occupation, foreign bombs, and suspicion. It means acknowledging that Muslim communities are not monolithic, that they consist of teachers, doctors, mothers, children, farmers, and leaders who want the same dignity and safety anyone else does. On the technical side, the reshaping of the Department of Defense under Trump also highlighted the delicate balance between civilian leadership and military autonomy. By design, the U.S. military is under civilian control to ensure that democratic accountability overrides the ambitions of generals. But when that civilian oversight becomes entangled with partisan politics, the line grows blurry. Critics feared that loyalty tests were replacing qualifications, and that the Pentagon's ability to provide independent professional military advice was being undermined. Supporters, however, saw it as reasserting the rightful authority of elected leaders over unelected bureaucrats. At the same time, this shakeup raised questions about America's alliances. NATO partners, Middle Eastern governments, and Asian allies all watched closely. For NATO, there were concerns about whether the U.S. was drifting away from its commitments. For Middle Eastern nations, the Pentagon's restructuring signaled uncertainty about whether American troops would stay, withdraw, or re-engage. For Muslim-majority countries long entangled in U.S. wars, the hope was that perhaps this shakeup could lead to a policy shift toward less intervention and more respect for sovereignty. Domestically, many Americans were divided. Some celebrated the changes as long overdue, viewing the Pentagon as a bloated institution resistant to reform. Others feared the chaos of sudden turnover and worried about the national security risks of instability. This divide mirrors the larger debates in American society about the role of the U.S. in the world. Should America continue being the global policeman, maintaining bases everywhere and intervening in conflicts abroad, or should it retrench, focus on its own people, and step back from endless entanglements? For Muslims, both inside the U.S. and abroad, the hope is that such debates finally include their perspective. Within America, Muslim citizens serve in the military, contribute to communities, and continue to break stereotypes. They know the sacrifices of war firsthand, both from their service and from the experiences of relatives in conflict regions. In examining the Pentagon shakeup, it becomes clear that this isn't just about who sits in which office in Washington. It's about the philosophy that drives the largest military in the world. Is the Pentagon an institution focused solely on projecting American power, or can it become an institution that values restraint, diplomacy, and mutual respect? Trump's reshaping was shocking, not only because of the names involved, but because of the larger questions it raised about America's identity and direction in the world. Every change in leadership carries consequences. In this case, the consequences extend far beyond American borders. They affect allies and adversaries, civilians and soldiers, Muslims and non-Muslims alike. Whether this shakeup ultimately leads to peace or prolongs conflict remains to be seen. But what's undeniable is that people across the globe are watching, hoping that this moment might mark a turning point away from decades of war and toward a more balanced, respectful engagement with the world.